Rapper, hip-hop nerd Logic is back with his 6th studio album titled No Pressure. There's nothing much to say about Logic. He's been, to put it lightly, garnering a lot of attention in recent years, from his immensely popular but emotional Suicide Hotline single that garnered him a Grammy nomination from his 2015 album Everybody, spawning numerous memes, commentary, critiques of how Logic forcibly tackles his biracial identity, or his subsequent albums such as Young Sinatra 4, Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, Supermarket, as well as Bobby Tarantino 2, whereby the reception is in the spectrum of meh or downright unlistenable. Confessions of a Dangerous Mind is a very prime example of that. Now, I have been following Logic for a long time, ever since I think 2011 or 2012, back when I was in secondary school, and looking back to where he was and where he is now, I can always have a sort of elation to where an underground artist have a sort of growth in popularity, garnering warmth from existing and new fans alike. But I can honestly say that in recent times and in his recent outputs, I've been very disappointed in the quality of work that he's been putting out. What once was an individual who showed a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of technicalities in the hip-hop art, has now turned to an individual who's just try-harding so much to show that I'm still here, I'm still rapping, and the haters are wrong. So after a social media hiatus, Logic or Bobby came out of nowhere and announced that the reason why he was taking that year off from any sort of digital or social media interaction was because he wanted to take care of his family, and considering that he has a new baby boy, which congratulations to him, it makes sense. And what followed after was an announcement of his final or hip-hop retirement album titled No Pressure. And the reason why he is retired is the same reason why he quit social media for a minute, was because he wanted to take care of his family, which I totally understand. But I would have to say this is a very risky and bold move. It's a sequel to one of his most popular, one of his most critically acclaimed, if I'm not mistaken, I think my favorite Logic album, Under Pressure. So with that context in mind, how does it stack up? I want to go to the production side of things first. After 6 years, Logic and No ID has finally come together again. Credit goes to No ID for bringing out this sort of boom bap East Coast style of production, of soul samples and whatnot, but with a slight modern polish to it. Is very much reminiscent of the mixtape days or his first album sound, which is funny enough, No ID actually produced that as well. And for those of you who don't know, Logic's usual style is taking sort of these 90s boom bap sound, tweaking it to a more modern sound and modern aesthetic to it. But in recent times, he's been garnering away further from that, which I totally understand, but it can get into mixed territories in terms of reception. He's been known to have a sort of technique and style similar to his contemporaries such as Kendrick, Drake, or J. Cole, even some those before him. I do agree with those sentiments. I do get a feeling that he sounds like a Drake or a J. Cole or a Kendrick sometimes, but my point or my perspective and my point of view is that he sounds like a 90s East Coast boom bap rapper, boom bap Drake at that, but a dude that can actually rap. Now, going from the point that's gonna get me crucified, in No Pressure, I was immensely hoping that he wouldn't try too hard. I just want his hip-hop spirit to consume him and just rap his ass off. And in No Pressure, I do think that Logic is finding his footing again. He sounds more comfortable, and in terms of bravado, he is bragging much better than before. But it's not without its caveats in the way he execute things. I mean, he still says some really cringeworthy lines. Like for instance, on Open Mic / Aquarius, he says, "I'm trying to get ahead like a fetus." Get it? Fetus, not having a head yet. That's why you're a girl all on my dick. I make him come, boy, you make him sick. I have evolved you a motherfucking crustacean. No, I can't. In regards to things and messages he talks about, he's still in sort of the recent Logic messages. He always talks about, look where I am now, bitches. I came from the bottom, now I'm up. Haters are wrong, and etc. It's still very prevalent, and I'll admit it gets a bit annoying the more and more I listen to this album. And I understand the art form of hip-hop is a platform for you to self-express, and by all means do that. I am not against that, but it does get a bit annoying when it is In terms of execution, it's just repetitive and linear in terms of the idea. But with that said, I would rather have him brag and be annoying over this type of production rather than, say, A Confession of a Dangerous Mind, where I feel like he seemed awkward or a bit disjointed. At least this time he sounds and feels comfortable when he flows, when he delivers punchlines. Logic is not only a, say, hip-hop fan or a hip-hop nerd, he is a pop culture nerd and fan at heart, and he shows it to its fullest extent, especially in sort of the video game aspect of it. For instance, on track in No Pressure, he actually have the voice of Solid Snake himself, David Hayter, give a sort of Metal Gear Solid-esque message transmission to Logic as he is rapping. Some of his lines, some of his song names, song titles, actual instrumental arrangements is interpolated from existing legendary hip-hop songs. For one, it's Heard 'Em Say, which is from Kanye West's late registration of the same track name. And for some reason, the track Open Mic / Aquarius have a sort of reminds me of Jay-Z's 22 Twos from his Reasonable Doubt album. Maybe I'm having sort of like a tunnel vision because that track opens up with sort of an open mic bar. This nerdy or sort of fanatic side of Logic can produce some great moments here in the album. Growing Pains 4 and GP4 is definitely a huge highlight, and the interpolation is none other than from Outkast songs. It has the track's equity at its finest, but still have that Logic twist or No ID twist that's still fresh and different at the same time. Growing Pains 4 have Outkast's Elevators from their AT Aliens album, whilst Man I Is have the Spotiote Dopalicious, I always get this name wrong, from their Aquemini album. On Growing Pains 4, I like the nocturnal keys and drums and the layered hook that he has here. Logic talks about the low income and dirty streets come up he had went through back in the days, and it gels very well with the very dark and nocturnal beat. In regards to Logic's flow, I like the rapid flow and switch of cadence that he did in the middle of the track here. I also like a couple of the lines he says, and that's another thing with this album. There's a lot of good lines that I felt like sticks out immediately, and I could genuinely say they're good punchlines. He's finding his footing. He's bragging a lot better here. We all say it, we all claim it, but it's no use. The greatest rapper alive is probably stacking produce, because trigger happy police tend to trigger happy people, and some people who believe we not equal shoot up the steeple. On Man I Is, I really like the horns and the groovy bass lines No ID has laced in the instrumentals here. It's wondrous, it's ethereal, it's funky. This time Logic does sound like he's tapping into his J. Cole side. Message-wise, again, he's not bending steel, he's not weaving a narrative that is very interesting in terms of idea or execution, but again, as I mentioned before, I think he's bragging a lot better. Gangsters put that heat to your head like a hairdresser. Too many kids in the community outlined in chalk, scared of drive-bys when they should just be scared of the dark. That's from the track Hit My Line. It does have a sort of everybody feel to it, but it's not too preachy. It sounds natural, and overall this album I should have expected in a sense, but it does feel like an Easter egg hunt for the avid fans or very day one sort of people. In terms of messaging, he nods to characters, narrative, song titles from his previous work. I mean, Talia, the AI android robot narrator, is back to sort of give audience bridges in between tracks on how this album and how Logic's legacy is made and what he is as a person and as an artist. I mean, take for instance the track Soul Food 2, which is a sequel from the Under Pressure album of the same name. He talks his distaste of the music industry very, very vividly, especially on the first part, and he does have a couple of great lines here. I'm darker than Gotham is, like reading Nostradamus at 90 degrees. You better believe I know how to turn a profit with ease. A lot of entendres here, like Nostradamus being a person who can predict the future, that's the prophet, and then like reading Nostradamus at 90 degrees, since he's a prophet, turning it, I can turn profit with ease, I can turn prophet, Nostradamus. So it's a really clever line, I really liked it. And on the second part of the track, he has the incredible true story narrative, again from the two spacemen, Kai and, let me read for a second, Thomas. This is another problem that I notice in this album. Although he brings it up, he doesn't really ties it all in. It's very inconsistent. It doesn't really lead to anything significant given the larger context of the album. It's just there and it's just gone. On Heard 'Em Say and Amen, this is definitely a love letter or a motivation letter to the fans that has been tuning in and listening to him ever since the very beginning of, say, Young and Reckless. The thumping and echoing drums on Heard 'Em Say especially has a certain smell or stench of a motivation track that just wants his fans to get up and do their best. And the inconsistency of narrative brings up again because at the end of Amen, Talia said that this is the end of the No Pressure program and now you're entering to the Ultra 85 program, but it doesn't really lead to anything. It's just there and it's gone. Logic has been saying that this Ultra 85 album or Ultra 85 project was the last project to tie in the Incredible True Story and Everybody narrative. I was hoping to get that with this Ultra 85 part of the No Pressure album, but I really didn't get anything out of it. Me personally, I think Ultra 85 should have been like an EP or a really short project to just tie it all in. It does really begs the question of, okay, what's the point to any of it? Going from a negative to a more positive connotation to this review, I think Open Mic / Aquarius 2, it might be my favorite track of the album here. I love the harmonious vocal melodies in the background along with the very skeletal and steady drums. And Logic has this sort of aggressive but stream of consciousness flow, although in the recording I think he has put the mic too close to his mouth. You can kind of hear the muffledness up into his nose, but I think that's supposed to be the idea of this dude coming up to an open mic show and just like pressing his mouth against the mic and just rapping his ass off. There is one part of the storytelling that I thought was very interesting. In this one, he tackles the relationship with his family, specifically his mom. I don't think he's ever talked about her in this detail, to my knowledge. I think battled addiction in the womb, crack baby by definition. There's a lot of quotable bars here. It's just in my jeans like a Glock 17, like a genetic scene. Kick in the door, we blow it off the hinge. Music, my drug, tie it off, then inject the syringe. On the Aquarius part of the track, the beats switch up to an even more skeletal instrumental. And credit where credit is due because Logic is showing more of a mature and personal side to him. Not all through and through. He does have his regular logicisms. I mean, for instance, the cringy track named Dad Bod. With a title like that, I knew that he was gonna talk about his family or his fatherhood aspect, and this line really gets me every time I listen to it, because back in my day it was food stamps and I love my wife like I am Chance. I thought that was very funny. I thought that was actually really funny. In regards to instrumental, it's simple with a lot of this atmospheric synths and vocal melodies in the background, and the way Logic thinks of the hook is very catchy, very earworm heavy, which I can always appreciate that in a hook. It does get humbling because it shows the family man or fatherhood aspect of Logic, but it can get a bit TMI. I mean, when he says, I can tell more about a baby diaper than any modern rappers. He also brings up a really douchey narrative where he shakes a fan's hand after scratching his balls. No, dude, that's TMI. One, that's TMI. Two, that's really, really douchey, man. Another part of being this sort of new phase of Logic is just that he just says, the haters are wrong, look where I am now, you can't do anything, all you just complain, I'm doing action. Look, we get that with you, and some of the reception to your recent albums aren't always eye to eye. I mean, that is music. It is a very subjective manner and a subjective based opinions, especially in any form of art, really. But I was really hoping with a track like this he would just look past that or mention it very, very briefly and just talk about his more mature and family life as a dad, as a husband, and as a dude who is about to retire. If anything, he should tackle these criticism and not seeing eye to eye like what he did on the track Dark Places. Dark Places and Five Hooks is two of the track that has a Tora Imoa sample. The beat has a very melancholic and nocturnal feel to it, and it's very fitting the atmosphere given the things he talks about in this track. I really appreciate the vulnerability and sort of the defeat nature Logic has decided to admit. He's just contemplating a lot. Like, what do they really want? I've given you all of my heart, all of the aspect of Logic. I totally could understand that, because I personally think Logic has gotten a lot of hate. Some of it deserving, if I'm being honest, but most of it not really, because people say they want the older me. Well, I'm 30, this the oldest me. Behold, it's me, the piece of shit that's not good enough, not black enough, not hood enough, not rich enough, not poor enough. My heart has poured enough. My least favorite track of the album is probably Celebration. I just think in terms of instrumentals and execution of Logic's flows and lyrics and whatnot, it just doesn't do much for me, and especially the feature, Silas, which is an artist under his Bobby Boy record label. He didn't do much on the track that impressed me, to be honest. Overall, this album has a very fitting name, a very fitting context of him retiring, but it does have the regular issues that I have with Logic, especially in his newer releases. Too try-hardy at times, and in terms of message, it's repeating in terms of execution, and the way he ties in this existing Easter egg narrative isn't all that much cohesive or consistent. But other than that, I do think he is sounding a lot more comfortable. He's speaking his heart out, and with a closing track like Obediently Yours, you could really tell that I think he's genuine. I think he's genuine that this is his retirement album. It's a farewell album for the fans and a fuck you album to the haters and naysayers. So that's my album review of Logic's No Pressure. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and don't forget to follow my Instagram account for more What the Robot Thinks content, and I'll see you guys soon. Stay safe. Peace.